So for the last 2 weeks, I have been reading aloud The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was one of my favorite books when I was little, and I have continued to just love this book. I have had my kids read it. I have listened to the radio theater that Focus on the Family made is fabulous. They have the full 7 series. I like the movies. This is my favorite version of the book. It is a full color collector's edition that has little pictures and stuff in it. But I thought that maybe I would take just a couple minutes and share what spiritual insights I find in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Some of them that are pretty obvious and some that maybe are a little more hidden. It's interesting how it is a book. You know, a really great book is a book that you can read over and over again and glean more out of it every time. The scriptures are like that. I can read the Bible dozens of times and every time get something new from it. So some obvious things in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe are that Aslan, the great lion, represents Christ himself. That Aslan, the great lion, sacrifices himself on behalf of Edmund. Edmund, the deceiver, the liar, the scoffer. Aslan didn't sacrifice himself for Lucy, the good girl. Aslan sacrificed himself for Edmund, which reminds me of one of my life verses that while I was yet a sinner, that Christ died for me. You know, and that is one beautiful, beautiful thing that we see here in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Aslan also dies on the stone table. But before he dies on the stone table, he has his mane shaved. He is ridiculed, humiliated. He's tied, and then he is raised from the dead. And after he's raised from the dead, he defeats the White Witch. So these are some kind of obvious symbolism in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But this time when I was reading it, something that really jumped out at me. So Lucy goes into the wardrobe and she finds this magical land. And when she comes back, everybody thinks that she's kind of crazy. She's lost it. She's loopy. Something must be wrong with her. Or, you know, she's being childish. Maybe she's not crazy, but she's being childish. But, you know, the professor believes her. The professor is the one who, you know, is smart. And he is the grown-up here. And yet he's the one that believes her. And he actually says something which a lot of people, I think Lewis said it like for adults, but he says something like that Lucy must either be lying, and is she usually a liar? Or she's crazy, and well, is she acting crazy? Or she's right. And that's when Lewis says that Jesus was either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. Well, that's in Narnia. So I'm asking myself, while I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, like maybe I don't want to tell people that I believe in Jesus because people are going to think I'm a little crazy or that I'm lying, that God hasn't really shown himself to me, that God doesn't really answer prayers, that God is not really involved in man, that God didn't really write this book. But I'm telling you, wise people still know him. Wise people who have studied the scriptures, who have studied archaeology, they believe in Jesus. They believe in scriptures. It's not only stupid, simple people that believe in God. Another thing maybe that is a little something that jumped out at me this time. So Father Christmas gives each of these 4 children gifts. And each of them are given different gifts, special gifts, unique gifts, and not just gifts that they want, right? He gives Susan like a little dagger or something. Like, these are gifts that Father Christmas gives to them, not so much just because they want them, but because they're needed for the kingdom. There is coming a time when that gift is going to be needed. Lucy is given this little bottle of healing cordial because it's going to be needed. Listen to that. It's going to be needed. When God gives you a gift, it's because it's going to be needed. Not necessarily because it's what you want, but because the kingdom needs it. God equips some people with spiritual gifts for the equipping of the saints, for the building up of the body, for the good of the kingdom. And the last thing I thought to myself in reading this today this last 2 weeks, it's a little different, is that Edward deceived himself into thinking that the witch was good, even though his own conscience was telling him otherwise. And I think when I was an atheist, which the first several times I read this book, I was an atheist. I'll tell you that when I was in 9th grade, I had to pick what was my favorite author, and I chose C.S. Lewis to be my favorite author. At this point in my life, I was a hardened, outspoken, self-professing atheist, but I picked C.S. Lewis as my favorite author, and I had to go to the library and check out books about C.S. Lewis to write about him as my favorite author. And man, that man was a Christian. And do you know what I did? I wrote that paper, just left all that out. I left it all out. I talked about that C.S. Lewis was, British, that he was really smart, and that he wrote these books. And I left out all the stuff about that he was a Christian. He was an atheist, but he was converted. Okay, but I didn't share about the conversion part. So Edward deceives himself, tells himself, oh yeah, that witch was really good. She was really nice. But his conscience was telling him otherwise. He knew that Lucy had really seen something. He knew Lucy was right. In his heart, he knew Lucy was right. But he didn't believe it. He didn't want her to be right. He told her brother and his brother and his sisters that, oh no, I hadn't been there. No, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't go to that place. But he was lying. He was lying to himself and he was lying to other people. And when I was an atheist, I 100%, I just thought everybody must be crazy, stupid, liars, crazy, selfish, simple people that needed a crutch. Those are all the things that I said. But listen, in my heart, number one, I wanted there to be some kind of God because I wanted there to be some kind of heaven. But two, there were moments in my life when God was showing himself to me, especially in creation. When I would see a sunrise or a sunset, when I would see a new baby, looking at the vastness of the ocean, the enormity of mountains, I would go, man, there's got to be some kind of creator out here. And I remember one time when I was in high school, and I was at a debate camp. I loved debating. I was a competitive debater and won debating awards and was pretty good at it. And I went to a debate camp out of town in Vermont, and I was sitting there in this big grassy field. And the breeze was blowing. I can still remember this moment, and the breeze is blowing and the trees are there, and it's this big grassy field and the bright blue sky, and it's beautiful. And I was like, man, God, if you're real, will you please show yourself to me? And when I did not hear an audible voice of God, I was like, oh, well, I guess God's not real. But you guys, God was showing himself to me in the beauty of creation. That's what Romans chapter 1 tells us. God shows himself through the beauty of creation. So listen, if you haven't read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for yourself, get a copy and read it. Read it to your kids. Think about it. Take time to think and read and think and take it a chapter or two at a time. Or if you want to, I have saved the whole series of me reading them aloud. Go and listen to them, chapter 1 through chapter 17. Or if you don't want to do that, really get the Focus on the Family radio theater. They're like $20 or something. And I think that they are even 1 week at a time releasing them for free on Focus on the Family's website. Thanks, you guys. Like, share, do whatever. If you don't share my stuff, share your own stuff. God is real and he wants people to know him. Bye, y'all.